The literature review can be pretty intimidating because really it is a summary of the research in the area of your topic for research paper, capstone, dissertation, thesis, any of those kinds of things. So there are a couple of tricks to be able to write a good literature review. The first is to start with the annotated bibliography. So the annotated bibliography is a list of references that you find in your literature search. Sidebar with the literature search, it is a very good idea to work with a librarian because there are certain search terms or phrases that might be used in research on your topic that you are not familiar with. There's so much jargon when it comes to research. So once you have your list of references, you start reading the articles. You can start with the abstract, but take time to read through the articles nice and slow because it is very likely that you will not understand maybe even most of the article because the study itself is kind of hidden. The article will talk about the methodology and the results, but if you don't have experience actually doing the research, it can seem a little bit convoluted. So nice and slow, read through it, and then in your annotated bibliography, you will have that reference in APA style, and then you'll have a summary that you write completely in your own words, including a sentence or two about how it applies to your very specific topic. So when you do your summary, you should not only paraphrase, but if there are any terms that you don't know or wouldn't be able to explain, leave those out. Take the time to understand that more so that you can, again, write it in your own words, but be able to explain it. That is really critical. So, okay, you've collected a bunch of references, you have 30, you have all the explanations of the summaries. Now you start to organize them. So you start to categorize them using subheadings. So imagine in your paper, you have literature review and then you have subheadings. So you're looking for ways that you can naturally separate articles into these categories. Maybe the first is about your first variable that you're looking at. Maybe you're looking at leadership style. And so you're looking at articles on leadership style and some outcome like burnout. Maybe then you do another section where it's research on leadership style and productivity. So however you organize it is totally up to you. So you are actually copying and pasting from your annotated bibliography into kind of an outline. From there, your transition from the annotated bibliography to the literature review is a very different style of writing. So your literature review should not read like, this study used this method and found this. Next paragraph, this study used this method and found this. It shouldn't be like one after another. You're basically blending the research together so it has a different flow. You could say, research on leadership style has shown that transformational leadership is related to lower burnout. And then when you cite in parentheses, you're probably going to write a bunch of citations because there are probably a bunch of articles that found that. So this is quite a learning curve to transition into writing your literature review. It takes time, it takes really knowing the research, and the more you are familiar with the research, the better you will be able to just kind of write freely from what you know and then put in the references secondly. That is one kind of way to do it. So with your literature review, you are now an expert in that field. So it is good to continually do another literature search. Look for articles that are more recent. If you have a draft of a paper that is now 6 months old, there might be studies that have been published in the last 6 months that might be really relevant. You can also look at your sections and see, is there a section that's much shorter? Maybe you want to add more studies to that section. So ultimately, your literature review is a summary of the research on your topic. You are going to have a lot of recent studies. You can also include older studies, but you have to ask yourself, why am I including this? How is it relevant? Is it relevant because it was one of the first studies on this topic? Is it relevant because you're showing the trend, whether it's that there's more research or that there's not a lot of research and it kind of stalled out? So there are very good reasons to include very dated articles, even that go back to the 60s, 70s, 80s. So it just needs to be clear why you're including it in your mind and then as you write your paper. Lastly, at the very end of your literature review, you are going to set it up so that your research has a place in that group of studies. So your last section of your literature review should say that there is a gap in the literature that you are going to fill. Maybe there hasn't been a study on leadership style and burnout in a certain occupation, in respiratory therapists, in radiologic technologists. Maybe it's all research on nurses. Whatever it is, it could be a geographical location, it could be a different method. It's something that is a little bit different than other studies, but it fits within that group. So you don't want to do something that's like totally super creative, but like very, very different than the other studies, because you want to think about it like if you published an article with your project, that it could be published in one of the journals that you found articles from. So you really want it to blend in, but you want to set it up so that you are saying you're an expert in this field and you know that this is an important topic to study and that your study will add to that literature. So that's a little bit about how to build a literature review. It is a very important anchor in any kind of paper, and it will set you up for success when you finish up your paper and you're going to have to circle back to what that literature said so that you can describe how your study fits into that whole big picture.